So, again, when you get to recycling, read this article very objectively. Like, they talk about cloth diapers versus regular diapers, and I thought that was kind of interesting, too.
Oh, yeah, that's a big one.
But you have to look at what is your goal. When you recycle, are you
Thank you.
to save water? Are you trying to save gasoline or coal? Are you trying to save...
Yeah.
Depending on what your goal
Well,
is.
probably all of the above,
is
but you have to
whether-
prioritize.
I hate to cut your conversation short, but we're live now, so we're going to get going here soon.
Yeah.
Okay, we're going to go ahead and call the meeting to order. It is June 18th, 2019 at 6:03 PM. We'll start with roll call. Sam, do you want to start? We'll go this way.
Sure. Sam Boss.
Rihanna LaRose.
Jordan Tate.
Marge Kane.
Tiz Crowley.
And Tony Bollier.
Thank you very much. So we'll go ahead and review and approve the May minutes. Were there any comments on that? Any suggested edits?
I'd like to add something, when we did subcommittee updates, I think it's nice to note that the mayor had done the official proclamation for Arbor Week for Auburn, and add that into the Forest Board.
For what week?
Arbor Week,
Arbor Week.
even though it's Maine Arbor Week, but he did an official proclamation. I thought that would be nice to add into
Yep,
our minutes.
I
We
can
did
certainly
talk
add
about
that. Thank you. Any other edits, revisions? Okay, I'm going to make a motion to approve the minutes with the suggested edit. Can I get a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
I'll abstain.
Tiz
I'm
abstains.
abstaining. I wasn't present and I couldn't find the video.
Okay, thank you. That should still be a quorum with 4, so I have to think about that with our smaller number now.
I had to sit in my old seat.
So we can open it up for the public comment, if the public wants to come forth and comment now, or if you want to hold off. Now is our open period.
Kathy. Come on down.
Kathy Shaw, Valley View Farm, Soapers Mill Road, Auburn, Maine. I don't have anything in particular to say except thank you, folks, very much for your continued efforts and diligence in protecting our resources, water, and conservation land. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you, and you're
Thank
welcome.
you.
Kathy, oops, you left too fast. I was going to ask her if she'd tell us about the farmer's market, because that's agricultural in the park.
Yeah.
Do I need to repeat my name again?
No.
No.
Oh, okay. So the Auburn Farmers Market, sponsored by the City of Auburn, but primarily member-driven, begins tomorrow, Wednesday evening, opposite Festival Plaza. It runs from 4:30 to 7:30, and it will run until the end of September. It is a rain or shine market. We have currently, right now, 6 vendors with a possible 2 more that will be joining us a little bit later on. A wide range of products, all locally grown, locally produced, and locally sourced. Our market does accept credit cards. This year we are taking SNAP and EBT and offering double market dollars for our folks that use those cards. And we do, as in addition, have a $1 off coupon available while supplies last, and a $5 coupon for seniors that do come see us at the market.
That's wonderful.
Anything
Those
else?
are Auburn seniors. and
Auburn
Auburn
seniors.
residents.
Auburn
Because that
residents.
funding is coming through the city of
City of
Auburn.
Auburn, that's right. Yep,
Thank you for the update.
thank you.
Okay, so if there is no more public comment, we can move on to the work completed So the Conservation Commission was recognized for an award by the Good Food Council of LA for our work on the Agriculture and Resource Protection Zone ordinance updates. That was June 13th, and that was actually at Side by Each Brewing. We have a nice plaque sitting over by Tony, and he's hopefully going to help us find a spot for it here in City Hall. So there was a picture taken by Julia Harper of the Good Food Council, and hopefully once we get that, we can have Liz make a Facebook posting online. Okay. I said why we got the award. Yeah, for our work on the Agriculture and Resource Protection Zone, for more specifically advocating for further education, fair consideration, and fair advocacy for as many people as possible to contribute their opinions on the matter. It says it in more detail on the plaque. Is there any other work completed that wasn't listed on the agenda that someone feels need to be added, or should we move on?
I don't think there's anything completed.
Okay. So we can move on to work in progress, starting with our subcommittee updates. We'll have Tiz take Parks.
Okay, so Parks does not have a formal report because we have not met. We continue to see that the city ignores our request to promote, so maybe we need, if we're going to keep the Parks Committee alive this coming fiscal year, then some decisions have to be made in membership. I know that our chair met with the Parks and Recreation Advisory and discussed possibly just having a liaison between the two. If you look at the work that they do, we actually do different things in parks. We work collaboratively, but there is no sort of overlap. We tend to look at parks as open space and what you can do there, and they look at more as recreational opportunities. I have not seen parks be very high on their work plan, and you know it's been consistent on ours, so we probably by September need to make a decision. The cemetery work group, even though it's small, got a couple things completed and work in progress. One is first of all, I hope I want to recognize the Parks and Public Services, Parks Division, and anybody else who worked on the cemeteries. Just before I left town, I saw that many had work done, and I know by Memorial Day weekend they looked outstanding. The veterans groups did an awesome job posting flags, but the cemetery group did, and I have to thank, I'm going to say Chief Curl, Assistant City Manager Curl, for supporting it and working with it in the fire department. We knew that the veterans do a great job putting out flags, but they only put flags where there are markers, and there were missing markers, lots of them. So working with the city, there were both flags and markers available at Central's fire station, so that you could even do it on weekends if you went out, took your family out and found that you were missing flags. Before I left town, I went to 2 cemeteries and went through. One of them was a really rainy day. It was pine, so it wasn't filled. But I found 5 in just my short time up there. The work can continue this summer, so I invite all of the commissioners and the community that's listening to check out your local cemeteries, and if you find a missing marker, it's still time, and they're out there. So I want to thank them. The ongoing project, before I left, I updated the finance director, but I didn't hear back. We still have our virtual bottle drive. I don't know if it's met its goal, which was $200. I know we had 140 something last time I checked the bottom line, to complete the big cemetery planter that's up at Oak Hill Cemetery. We were raising the funds so that work could be done, but it had not been completed by Memorial Day. So now that I'm back in the state of Maine for more than 2 weeks, I will follow up with co-chair.
I had just one question, Tiz. If anybody does find marker or unmarked graves in the cemeteries, are those markers still available?
Yes,
at
they
the
are.
Auburn Fire Department?
Yep, I can't remember whether it was Chief Carl or some city staffers such as Tony that said that they were available and would be available there, because this is a perfect time to do it this summer.
Okay, so they'd be available at the Auburn Fire Department?
Yes,
Or like who
Central
would we
Station.
contact?
Central,
Okay.
just go out.
Yep.
Just go out. I don't know, Tony could tell you if they also have them at the Grace Lawn area, or, no, just the Central.
Okay, awesome, thanks.
Thank you for the update. Rihanna, do you want to take the Forest Board update?
We had no meeting in May, so there's really nothing actively to report.
Thank you. I think we'll jump down to the LA Trails and Mount Appetite group and then go to the AGRP project. So I know that you're on Mount Appetite. We ended up losing our LA Trails kind of
Liaison.
what did we call them? Champion, yes, liaison. I think they had a meeting after our last May meeting, but any updates you have on the Mount Appetite group?
I'm going to try to attend their next meeting. It sounds like they're going to be moving the time a little later. And I think what most people were struggling with, the LA Trails, was the time constraint. It was 4 o'clock meeting that was starting. So they're supposedly going to be moving that a little later, possibly 5 o'clock, and then I would be able to attend. As far as the Mount Appetite group, they were meeting simultaneously because we had to move our meeting in the other room, if you remember. So I was not at that meeting, but we just got our meeting minutes, and they have approved the new logo for the Mount Appetite group. The Facebook page is off and running, and we're asking everybody to contribute that, is up there visiting the trails if they have anything that they want to report. We have started posting signs, and we actually have a follow-up meeting next Tuesday, the 25th, at 6 p.m., and we're going to meet on the small road instead of in here. The reason why we're doing that is because we're inviting the Snowmobile Club and collaborating with them. We're going to work on possibly getting, porta potties. Sabrina's working on that. We're going to actually go out and visit probably some of the trails and kind of look. We're talking about renaming some of the trails that are not named and getting markers out there. So we were hoping that the whole group would go for a nice little walk so we can all be on the same page and physically look at these areas. So that's the plan for next week.
What time was that?
6 p.m.
Thank you.
Anybody can show up, by the way. Be a nice day to be outside.
Yeah.
So I want to thank the group for getting organized and getting so far so quickly. It should be recognized that the Conservation Commission is a liaison to that group. It's not our group, which is why
Correct.
they were able to move so quickly with logos and other things. I don't know about things named in the park because that is a city park, but I commend the organization. And as they post things, maybe we as individual commissioners can repost. I don't know what the city's policy is for our joint work.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
But congratulations.
Good suggestions, Tiz. The more PR, the better.
That's right.
So if there are no more work in progress subcommittee updates, we'll go on to the Agriculture and Resource Protection Zone updates. Tiz, as a refresher for you, since you weren't here and there was no video, we went through step by step of the ordinance, picking out our specifics, but with the ultimate feedback being, we suggest waiting until the formation of an Agriculture and Resource Protection Zone Commission or Advisory Board that would be part of the process for forming the new ordinance or adjusting the ordinance as is. And the specifics led us to that conclusion. So we did receive, in between the last meeting and now, a memorandum from the legal group working on this, which does kind of throw a wrench into the process as it is now. There's many problematic issues that is likely going to slow this down, cause it to be reevaluated. But that said, the letter that we formulated that we'll vote on tonight, I think is still relevant. Because even if these issues did get addressed, we would still recommend that group be formed first and be part of the process. So if anyone wants to chime in on their thoughts regarding how we move forward, I'd be happy to hear that.
I agree with you, Jordan. I think actually the letter strengthens the text. The letter from the legal representatives that the city brought into this actually strengthens the comments that we made because they add clarity to the points that we made and say from a legal perspective, some of what was proposed doesn't really hold up, and particularly in reference to the comprehensive plan. I think that's a very important thing for us to bear in mind, and I know the planning board emphasized that as well. But just, I believe it's on the second page of the letter here. There are a number of concerns, but I think, specifically the fact that the proposals to loosen some of the restrictions on the ag zone, resource protection zone, wouldn't actually align with the efforts to protect that territory as restricted use, I think is pretty important, so we can bring that into the letter a bit.
Okay, thank you. Any other?
Really appreciated the letter, and I had seen the attorney letter from the attorney for the city of Auburn the day it came out, and unfortunately I left my copy because I marked it all up, but I would request that be part of our supplemental agenda packet since we all saw it through Ben in that, because it's an excellent document. It makes some points, and I'll follow up because I had it half-typed. Send to the chair to distribute as she sees fit. But I think that it was good news. The two things besides making sure they start with the egg zone, an agricultural group, if they're having trouble, we can again volunteer, because we've talked about doing that ourselves. So I'm not sure how long we want it to sit, but I'm hoping the city will take action. And the second is that maybe we reach out, since we've got a pause, to the planning board through our chairs, the chairs meet. As you know, we keep getting left behind, left out. People they don't say planning board and conservation. We each have roles in this thing. So maybe reach out to planning board, and whatever joint work is done on this, let's do it jointly. Hold the joint workshops when that document or topic comes up, because they've been dealing with it longer than we have, the planning board, but we do have very different aspects of that change that we need to be sure is included.
So to clarify, so I understand what you're saying, is that any work moving forward regarding the ordinance changes, that we work jointly with the planning board to ensure that we have adequate representation?
Yes, and that's if they're interested, but we can reach out. It may save time in duplication of the same work. It definitely will increase understanding. And since we come at the topic from different use, they're looking at land use and we're looking at conservation and green spaces, I think it will be helpful to both groups.
I agree that that's a good idea. It's something that's kind of been tossed around throughout the past couple months. But like you said, since there's kind of this big wrench thrown in here and there's a pause, I think now is a good time. I can reach out to the planning board chair and see if that's something they'd be open to. I'm not exactly sure what the structure would look like, if we would have to have separate workshops in addition to our meetings.
Or we could be courteous and alternate. When the subject's on their agenda, we would go there that time. If the subject appears, the next time it appears on ours. That kind of thing, rather than become an elaborate work group.
Right.
I would agree. I think communication between the two bodies is of great importance here. The one thing I would hesitate with that is that logistically, I think it would get complicated for one, just getting everybody in the same room. I think, especially over the summer, I can't underestimate that.
I'm thinking fall.
But I'm even thinking, so as I understand it, the Ag Resource Protection Commission, or whatever we're calling it at this
The
point.
mayor's group.
No, the new one that's to be formed.
The proposed advisory
Formed
board.
one.
The
Okay.
to-be-formed one will be formed by September. So I would worry that if we have joint meetings of the Conservation Commission and the Planning Board and a new agriculture group, it could get quite confusing. And the clarity of who's actually informing the decision, I think, could become really tricky.
I think that's a really good point. And I have been keeping loosely on top of the formation of this Agriculture and Resource Protection Advisory Commission, whatever they're going to call it. But I didn't realize it was supposed to be formed in September. So I think we need to advocate more strongly our availability to help contribute to that process and the formation of it, and just provide our input on what we think it should look like in our formal letter, and just keep it all in one place, and maybe subdivide it a little bit more with some distinctive headers so that it's obvious what we're saying. But I know that there have been some concerns about the way that it's proposed right now. So I think that if we want to have input on how this advisory board to be formed is going to look like, then we should make that a primary focus now, and then maybe focus on collaboration, like you said, in the fall.
That would work. I just didn't, knowing we've got the pause, what I'd like not to be repeated is all the workshops, public hearings and stuff, planning board did, and then we followed, and it just put a great burden on our public, which is the greater concern I have. So if we can just keep it in mind, that's a great
I think I'll reach out to the planning board chair still sooner as opposed to later. That way it's a forethought moving forward in the summer and not something to hit them with in the fall. So I'll definitely initiate that communication sooner as opposed to later.
And your point about having input on this committee that's formed by September, maybe that should be on our next meeting agenda.
I can definitely add it to our next agenda.
Thank you.
When we do
So-
submit this formal letter to Jordan, I'd like to see the seal put up in this corner. Because on our,
Oh, okay.
we've
It-
missed that.
It
and I
was
think that's
there,
pretty important.
but I think with formatting, it
Disappeared?
launched
Okay.
itself maybe into
Okay.
a different page. So
Yep.
I didn't notice that was it like that in the final version. So thank you for bringing that up. So I guess my question would be if we're going to add talking about our input on the formation of this advisory board to our next agenda, should we just submit the letter as is, saying that we'd like to be part of it, and then maybe consider that being a separate letter if we do have more formal feedback on how we want to see it?
I think so. I don't want to slow
I
this
agree.
letter down. I also, in our supplemental packet, I think it's duly noted that when we add the legal letter that we received back, that this was part of our May. We did not have that. That was not submitted until the 10th of this month. So that would be fine to add to a supplemental packet for June moving forward, but I would not want to see it with our May submissions.
Oh, no, I meant it for the,
Yeah.
it's only
I just
arrived
want to
today.
clarify, yeah, okay.
I'd like to pose a question as to whether, some other elements are hoping to move more rapidly than, and very possibly the council might be taking action prior to our July meeting. And so I would encourage our chair to reach out to Eric for a possible update on the working draft that they have at the present time, and if she could share that with each member of our group. And then also ask Eric basically to forward the draft minutes following each successive meeting, so that basically we're current, so that if there should be any need or desire for this group to meet and provide some input prior to our next meeting, that at least we could have the opportunity to communicate. Because to the best of my knowledge, there may be some parts of the proposal at the present time that this group might not be 100% comfortable with.
And that's on the advisory board that they're talking about, to be
That's
specific?
right,
Okay.
that's right. I think particularly areas that may be of concern basically would be the possible inclusion of voting capability for Auburn non-residents, and also the potential background requirements for members of that particular group. And so I think not saying that we agree or disagree, but basically we should have the opportunity to reflect and provide input.
Thank you. I think that's
Yeah.
a pretty good point, and I would agree that it would be best to contact Eric after this meeting so that we can have the most recent information, and I can distribute that once I hear back.
And then each successive meeting as well, see.
And would that be planning board meetings, or which meeting should I be asking for the minutes for?
For the group that has been tasked with the
Okay.
recommendation
Staff group.
for formation and structure of the new committee.
Okay, thank you.
There is a council subgroup that has been named, and basically that, so that we're current, because basically it's relevant to our agenda.
That would be very
Yeah.
important. But I'd ask Tony, are those also being put on the Egg Zone page? You know, Rosemary and everybody did such a great job putting all of Egg Zone information in one place on the website. Is this committee there as well?
I'm not sure.
I have not seen anything on there, but I have
That
not
would
been
be the
on there.
part two of the
No?
request is,
So,
No one here knows, so it should be, in my opinion, it should be, again, it's continuation of that whole agricultural zone issue, and let's not let that great page get out of date.
Yeah. And it should be all in one place.
It should be, that was the purpose of it, and I thought staff did a great job gathering all that stuff in one place with appropriate links.
They definitely did. And I can mention that when I contact Eric as well. And I'll CC Rosemary because I know that she did a lot of
Yeah.
work in the GIS front, but I'm not sure if she's necessarily been handling the document side, but I'll make sure to
Yeah,
contact both
I
of
don't know
them.
who did what, but they did a good job.
So, going back to the letter, I know that there was a mention of including the seal, making sure that that's on there properly. Were there any other revisions or suggestions to the letter that we want to submit to the mayor and city council regarding our feedback?
I personally think you did a really good job capturing a lot of what we said. I mean, we could nitpick that to death and say, oh, well, we missed this, we missed that, but this is plenty.
Thank you.
I would encourage, Jordan to read precisely the language that she's proposed in the drafting, and to make certain that we are not committing our group until after we see the results of the action the council takes on the structure and functioning of the new ag committee. But because I think if, we want to make certain that, at least I'm not comfortable in signing and suggesting open-end concurrence until we know what we're concurring.
So are you suggesting that we read this letter, or at least the proposed edits or feedback, so that it's
No,
for the public?
I don't, as I recall, the language in the minutes, essentially as far as the letter, basically that we defer comments or defer acceptance until the naming of the ag resource gone. And so basically, I'm just saying that I feel we should be familiar with our comfort level with the result prior to committing ourselves.
Well, I did put in the letter to make sure that overall we recommend not changing the ordinance yet until the formation of this group. But the lines that I addressed were the specific reasons that led us to the overall conclusion of no progress, like do not move forward with this until the formation.
That's fine, but I think we want to make sure that it's not misinterpreted as being, once the group is formed, we automatically accept the results.
Yes, I can add in something about a quick line or two in the beginning about the Conservation Commission expects to remain part of the process after the establishment of such a commission. Thank you.
So do you want a formal motion, or I quickly looking at the minutes didn't see you made a formal motion because this was still in draft? Because I'd be happy to move with the few changes we've talked about.
Yes, that would be great.
Okay, I move that we forward this letter with the few changes that were mentioned, the seal being one, the added line that the chair just mentioned, and those were the only two that I thought were there. I read this, actually thought it had been sent and thought it was outstanding, so I don't have any additions.
Thank you.
I would, I would certainly agree with everyone else about the quality of the letter as it is. I think it's excellent. I found just a few small nitpicky things
I'd like
because
those. Go ahead.
that is the essence of, educators and, so listed below is specific. This is in the second paragraph. This is just a real quick grammatical tweak, but at the bottom of the second paragraph, listed below is specific feedback which lead the Conservation Commission
Yeah.
to recommend no action. I would say either leads or led.
Yeah. Yeah, agreed.
So change it to leads. Can I just, I don't have a copy of mine with me. Okay. Yes,
Or lead.
leads,
I
gotcha.
like lead.
Okay. Yep. either one is fine, I think. Yeah.
I feel like leads means that we're still undecided in motion,
That's true.
thinking about it.
I think lead would be
means
good.
we've made our decision.
Okay, so lead.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
And did you have others?
So just a couple others on the second page. There were a couple instances where you refer to unintended consequences. And I thought it might be worth clarifying what we're thinking about in that. I think unintended consequences is a good broad catch-all, but I think, we have specific concerns that came up at the last meeting about changes in land use and deviation from the comp plan and from the vision of the ag zone. So I think clarifying that a bit could be a way to strengthen our hand a bit.
I think I can add that in. If you could either send a quick email after this meeting
Yeah.
with some specifics just to help along
Yeah,
with the process, that would be great.
Okay.
No, I would agree with Sam basically on his specific comments. At the same time, I don't think we want to lose the concept of unintended consequences, because basically our inability to completely and accurately predict what's going to occur is the reason for using the term, because it's unintended because it's unexpected. And basically with the process, not only this process, but so many processes are so rushed that it's easy for unexpected consequences to incur. And so I think we have to recognize that there's that danger everywhere, and it's an ongoing danger, and we need to protect ourselves against that as much as possible.
I think that makes great sense. I think we should keep the language of unintended consequences in there based on what you said. But I also think enumerating, specific concerns, unintended consequences. Such as,
Including but not limited to.
Yeah, exactly. I think that would just add
There you
a
go.
bit of specificity and help clear things up about what we're really worried about with this.
So one of them, I was quickly looking, because someplace I read it, one of them is unintended, has to do with the watershed, the drinking water.
Exactly,
watershed.
yeah.
So you might be able to give 2 or 3 examples that and by examples I just mean lines as you edit it, that he would send you, and then say, and these are just the ones that have come up, somebody's thought about. But really, the greater concern is, we don't know until it
Right.
happens. Too little, too late.
Yep. And then the only other thing that I wanted to mention was just an update, because there's a line here in this first big paragraph on the second page. We believe this is crucial information that needs to be collected before making changes to the ordinance, and Bates has offered further collaboration to collect this data. I would just say that Bates is actually in process. We actually have a faculty member who's working on that currently. So it might just be another thing to add in there to strengthen, to show that this is ongoing and that we should really wait until we have this information.
So
Or how about Ann Bates has offered to continue its current collaboration?
Yeah,
Well, I think you said they've already started working on it. I think I saw
Yeah.
something about a summer intern
That's
recently
right.
in my email.
yeah, we have 2 summer interns working on it with a faculty member who received some funds from the college to do that. And I know he's working on it pretty much as his focus of his summer research at this point, so.
And was that in regards to because basically one thing that we had highlighted is that we don't know how many people are in need of this service, and the city said that would be hard to track down, is how many people with their non-conforming lots who want to build, or maybe who don't meet the income requirement who want to build, are desiring and pressing for these changes. And I think that's one thing that I had mentioned to the Bates professor, but do you know if that's specifically what they're working on? Because I just want to make sure that there's no confusion on what.
Yeah, so just to add to the record, the professor is Francis Eanes in the Environmental Studies Department, and he's working on that question among a number of others, and maybe there are some group members who have met with him who would have some feedback on that as well. But I know he's also interested in getting a broad sense of what people envision as the future of agriculture in this area, and asking questions that would allow people to share that feedback beyond just, do you want to build, but really getting a sense of what are some of the other possibilities that people are interested in and excited about, because I think we've gotten so focused on this question of development or not development and, 50%, et cetera, that we kind of lose sight of, what do we actually want to see? And that's I think what they're really focused on.
Okay,
So you could
Thank you.
fix that sentence, the exact words I'd leave to the chair, but making it more direct and more forceful. As an example, this is not necessarily how you have to do it. But the sentence reads, "We believe this is critical information that needs to be collected before making changes to the ordinance. And we will continue to collaborate with Bates College to gather this data." So an active word and teaming it.
And adding in there, this work is ongoing as of, July 2018 or 2019.
I'll just say as of the issuance of this letter.
Yeah,
whatever.
perfect, yeah.
Okay, so I think all those changes are.
in my motion, if somebody will second it. I don't know if you got a second on that.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Typing. All right.
Nicely done, Jordan.
Yes.
Thank you
and-
for putting that together. That's a lot of work.
Oh,
You did
of
a
course.
Wonderful job.
I was happy to. Just to clarify, Tiz, in that motion, so I know we're sending this to the city council and the mayor, but was there anyone added
Well,
into the motion?
I really liked your, again, you can tell I like the letter, I thought it already gone, and others it may concern. So I think each of us might be able to add some names here and then think about it. I would definitely add the Lake Auburn Watershed Protection Commission. I would definitely add the Auburn Water District Board of Trustees. I would definitely send to the person running our farmers market. I would.
Good Food Council or the Good
The
Food
Council,
Charter?
right.
Yeah, I see where you're going with that.
And,
Is that
our
included in the
neighborhood-
distribution list or in the group
The
of
letter. I assume
members
this is how
addressed?
you're going to-
Addressed.
Just as this, the others don't have to be itemized,
Okay, but just included in the distribution of the
but
letter?
included in
Yes.
this directly. When it goes out to all of them.
Perfect.
And
Yeah.
again, the neighborhood group that meets on this, used to be on Wednesdays, now it's Thursdays. You might contact their chair, and they may have other, Bates College as an example. Off the top of my head, we've named at least 8 that we definitely want to include. But if people are thoughtful and can send Jordan a list.
Yes, and I'll likely end up involving Sue to make sure that we have all of the accurate information. Say, Sue, can you please distribute this to these groups? So,
City manager would
but
be
I will
part of that.
I will directly send it to city council and the mayor, and then also have Sue send that along just in case it
Yep,
doesn't
perfect.
go the right place. Okay, so I think that's all we had for the agriculture resource protection zone updates, right?
Yep.
Wow. All right.
We're
we have
getting
so
there.
much time left now. So I don't have any other work in progress or subcommittee updates to report. So if everyone's comfortable moving into the new business, we can discuss the, do I not have the annual report on there? I don't.
Somewhere.
Wouldn't the annual report be old business or work
I
in
guess it would be
Well,
work in progress.
Work in progress, it just got
Yeah, I think I meant to move it and then ended up just deleting it from new business. So we will discuss the annual report now in the work in progress phase of our discussion. Tiz, I know that you had put in a great deal of edits. Thank you for adding. It was definitely a very rough draft, so any additions were welcome.
I will send it electronically, I just didn't, I was working on it when I realized what time it was. And I'll send it to the chair who can distribute to the others. But in summary, just from a process standpoint, I already know Sam and I are going to be on the same page about details. I tried to use bold and italics in my changes, so you could find them in the other. I know there's some way to do document changes, but I don't know how. And I didn't get to attach, because it wasn't finished, the cemeteries report that's referenced. I sort of ended when I got to parks, because I ran out of time. I had to go back to parks minutes and stuff, which are still not online.
Yeah, in addition to that too, I had some comments. One, I think we should add our award for the Good Food Charter that we received. And I would also like to note that we were part of the Good Food Council workshop and represented during the sustainable farming of agriculture and access to local food. that was held at the senior center. I think that's kind of important, seeing
Oh,
how we got an award and we've been working on this. And I'd like to add some pictures possibly, if we could. We talked about that, you and me, sidely, but
Yep.
now that we're all here,
Would you have
possibly some, yeah, and possibly, I don't know if you have pictures of some of the park stuff that was done at the beginning of last year.
I can, if you let me know if we don't find them, the city website has some
Yeah.
pictures, and I know I took only problem places. I don't know if Misty took them, but I'd be happy, it would be just easier to go out to the parks and
Yeah,
take a couple photos.
I'd like to add some photos in there of some stuff so we could
Add in
show.
Arbor Week photos, the Good
Yep,
Food Council
the tree
photo.
planting, that's right.
Parks photos, so
Yep.
any photos
Yep.
I'd be happy to have and add in if you just send them to me.
And we should also duly note, again, the official proclamation, the Arbor Week, add that to the, in that same spot. Anything else?
I think when you
We've
talk
had a
about-
very busy year, and this is amazing.
I think the mayor last year, we can go back and check the minutes, but I think he recognized Parks and Recreation Month as well, last July, which would be the start of this annual.
Can you look into that?
Yeah,
Maybe
I'll
we
check
can
to
add
see.
that too. That would be wonderful.
And it would be helpful if you want to mark up your own copy digitally and send it to me, or just type in the body of an email your edits. That would be helpful. I'm trying to capture everything in my notes, but I just don't want to leave anything out. So if you can just email me with all of your specific feedback, that would be greatly appreciated. Content-wise, anything else that was missing? I think, like Brianna said, we had a very active year. There's a lot of great stuff in here.
It's kind of amazing when you start putting it really down on paper.
That's what's so
Everybody knows they're
important, though,
busy,
about
but
the
busy doing
committees.
what? Yeah.
And I believe it'll be interesting once we submit this to ask, but I have not seen any other committee complete that requirement. Any other committee complete that requirement. And we have consistently, admittedly, 1 year with our transition, we were quite late, but they were all completed. And they should be available on the website for each of these people. I did have a question, and I couldn't find it going back in the time. Do you remember when Owen came? Was that after July 1st?
I think it was
That
in
was
February.
February 2018.
Yeah.
18, okay, so it's
It would
last
have
year's
been
annual
yeah.
report. Okay.
Yes.
I know, I thought of that too. I'm like,
Yeah.
I feel like,
It starts to blur together, the
I know.
timeline.
And Jordan's 2 presentations at the city council, I think are mentioned in there that she did, but that should be brought forth because, again, she did
I don't know that
incredible-
it is in there. That's,
Incredible job, really
Add it.
exceptional job on the documents for that public program.
I'll make sure those are in there for sure.
Great.
Okay. If that completes all comments on the annual report, we can,
So we'll vote on our final copy at our next meeting?
yes.
Yep.
After I receive any other feedback digitally, I'll have a second draft, which hopefully we can vote on. So now we can really go to new business. So I guess the more important thing is that we have 2 vacancies that need to be filled on the Conservation Commission since Jonna Flood has left and Ben Lowe has resigned.
He completed his term.
Yes, he completed his term, and I actually saw that in
And
your
stayed on later.
annual report.
as a matter
Yes,
of
yes,
fact,
he did.
With great appreciation.
So I will make sure to update that in the annual report that he completed his term, and then John did resign. So Sue has been notified of those vacancies, so hopefully the city website, I haven't checked since I
I
notified her.
checked today and it still says 1.
Still says 1, okay. So hopefully that will be updated shortly. If not, I can send a reminder email.
I wonder if this needs a little bit of our attention. One is, and I didn't go back, I know I looked at it earlier, but I specifically wanted to do it just before the meeting and I forgot to go, is we have the openings, Mr. Keene gave us the copy, so it lists Conservation Commission and that. Why would you come to us? So if you click on Conservation, you click on any board page, there's a narrative up in the beginning. And some of them tell you what the committee does, and others tell you who we're looking for, and some tell you when the meetings are and some do not. I think we need to do a little bit of work of clarifying what we need there, and maybe even going so far as putting together a little promotion piece that we can use ourselves. That's the first thing, and the second is each of us sort of need to make a commitment to reach out and help find. In the olden days, and I mean olden before my time, the city council members were actually responsible for recruiting committee members. So maybe we can reach out to the council and once we are clear what it is we're looking for and what we need. The second thing is, and I put it in my edit, we're still waiting. I know the reason why it's not done, but we're still waiting for the city council to approve, and I think the term was alternate, not associate, like other committees, 2 alternate members for us, so that we can reach a quorum and have a vote. We are one of the few that are only the 7. Planning board, as an example, has alternate members, so in the absence of a planning board voting member, one of the alternates steps up and votes. This committee did all that work, made the recommendations, approved them, and they've been sitting with the city for more than 2 years. So maybe we could, not this month, but next month.
Better work on that.
Yeah.
Going back to your first, I'm in complete agreement, because when you go to this, if you click on that, that actually just brings you to the ordinance
Right.
on why we're, formed in the first place. It says nothing about really what we do, or promotion piece. A little paragraph right there would be really fantastic, I think. And we do need 2 alternates, and I am in complete agreement. And this keeps coming up, too. We've talked about this, especially now, that we're down to.
This is it. We're fully 100% in attendance right now.
Yeah.
And that's really tough come fall. I would, happy to let Jordan do it, but I know that Jordan and you have been doing a lot of this. As long as somebody sends it, I'd love to work with Sam about creating something that we could reproduce. Now, I know that all public communications have to go through the city,
Yeah.
but I also know that city staff is very challenged on promotion and publicity. So we could create something that, as individuals, we could use to explain and go out and make a commitment.
I would be very happy to work with you on that. I like Rihanna, I completely agree with you, Tiz. I think it's really important to give people a sense of what they're actually signing on for, and also recruit people who have the right qualifications. And I think there's such a desire to get people who are serving on these committees, but we should also give people a sense of what would equip you to serve on this committee, and what kinds of skills are we looking for.
I think this gets back to a topic we'd discussed earlier, and that is creating some sort of an organized communications effort. And
I agree, Mr. Keene, and I'm glad you brought that up.
well, thank you.
Well, because it's been your thing, and you've even helped us get resources. And I know Jordan did some work on that, too.
City Council's meeting, I think, this week. They did not meet last week.
They're meeting Monday,
Yeah.
and the budget will be a vote.
Okay. So can we put something together or propose that to City Council so they can put it on the next agenda?
For which part?
Well, the need to get 2 alternatives, like to
So
add that to our
maybe-
ordinance.
Just,
How do we?
yes, we needed it yesterday, but we needed it.
I know.
What if instead, we take a look at what we passed, because we did a full edit of the ordinance.
Yes, we did. yeah.
And we could attach that as our request directly to the city council, because it has.
Like
and
as
this-
an
By the way, I
amendment?
want to make sure, this is not, Tony's not getting it done. This
Yeah.
went to management, and it's been sitting in management. I want to be clear, this is not Tony, this is city management, but it's sat there for 2 years. So maybe what we could do is provide them the whole thing, but point out the urgency. This is the piece we want changed now, which is the alternate.
So.
Okay, I can agree with saying maybe this is the part we want changed now, but my trouble with that is I have a draft version of the ordinance changes that we made, but I wasn't the chair at the time. I think Pete Preble still was. And I don't know if I have the copy that was sent to the city council for the changes. So I think we as a commission need to review that and see if that's
yeah.
still something, if we agree with all the changes that we made still, and just make sure that we have a version that our current board agrees with before we put that forth for changes,
That-
just because I don't know if I have the copy that
No,
they
I
have.
agree with you, that could, if we could put that in July, and we may have to look at it and say, we're reviewing all of this, because it was months of work. I mean, it was months of work, and say, we're reviewing all of this, but right now, as an example, this was brought forth, because a lot of that was sitting in when Nicole was chair, because I was present when she had the conversation with the acting city manager and said, you know, we need this. And at that time, it was the city's position they were going to bring ordinance changes from all boards and committees that suggested, which was a great idea. I don't dispute the idea, a lot of work. But here we sit later. So if we could add that to our July agenda to have reviewed it as part of what we have.
Yes, I can definitely add that to the July agenda to have the draft ordinance changes reviewed, or proposed ordinance changes reviewed prior to the July meeting, so that if there's any
Right.
discussion that needs to be had. I will also, once we contact city council again about the changes, I can reiterate that this was an attempt that had been done in 2016. So just to make sure that that
Right.
component isn't lost.
And Pete Preble and Nicole probably could be reached. If you have any trouble, Jordan, I know, I think I've got contacts for both of them. If you're concerned you don't have the most current edition.
I want to say, last year, did we not agree that we were going to do this every year anyway, in sometime July, August? Reviewing the ordinance every year, reviewing the
I don't know if we
plan.
talked about doing it every year. I think last year, around this time, I had suggested a strategic plan and maybe reevaluating that on a year-to-year basis. I don't know if we talked about reviewing the ordinance every year, but I know that it's something that we had talked about last year, generally reviewing our structure. Which kind of leads me to my next point about, I do want to create a strategic plan for this group. It's not something I've even started drafting yet, but I know that communications work group or whatever structure has been, addressed multiple times. That would be something that would be fantastic to add into a strategic plan. Things on the track of our subcommittees, goals that we want to accomplish in the near term, in the future term. I think those are all things that would be super helpful. And now that things are kind of loosening up for the summer, I think that would be a great time to start working on that. I don't know the exact strategy of how we would go about that, if we want to dedicate a meeting to it, or if we want to kind of create a general format and then have people provide feedback individually through email. And, well, same thing like if you would provide revisions
Right.
through an email. But is the group in favor of doing some kind of 5-year strategic plan for the Conservation Commission?
Absolutely. I think that's a really good idea, and I think it's just a great opportunity for us to think about, some of the issues that Morris has brought up in terms of communication with the other committees and our strategic positioning in relationship with the city council. Because I haven't had a chance to read the letters you presented, Jordan, but it does seem from talking to all of you like there has been real concern about the city council disregarding the feedback of the Conservation Commission. So thinking about what we could do to really strengthen our position, I think would be really helpful. I don't know what that looks like, but I think it's something we could maybe suss out with a conversation.
We could always start with our annual report that we're finalizing and working on. That would be a good starting point, looking at all of those accomplishments, and if that is something that we're going to do every year or every 5 years, or... I think there's plenty of work to get started. We have kind of a starting point.
I like working with a tool.
Yeah.
So we should look at our annual reports, and then what elements of our work have we identified, go back to the ordinance and almost list the pieces that we're responsible for, have oversight. The second is to take a look, the Forest Board has been doing that for a number of years. Our current Forest Board has a 5-year, I think they call it a strategic work plan. I like
Yeah.
tangible results, so I'd love the word work in there. I do have a book, I haven't looked at it in forever, well, since I got off Parks and Recreation, but I do have a master plan implementation guide for Parks and Recreation. So again, a strategic plan's a strategic plan, fill in the industry. So maybe somebody else has got a document or work tool that they like. I know that, you are all still working, so would have a contemporary one. I could find an old-fashioned one.
I know there's tons of free templates online, so it's definitely somewhere that we can start and then just have, a block of time in one of our meetings to, maybe put it up on the screen and go through it and start adding things and have it be a real rough working document. And then once we're ready to polish it up, maybe add in some more details and city seal and stuff like that. But I definitely think there's plenty of resources where we can get a rough draft started. And then, as Rihanna, you mentioned, seeing what we've currently been working on over the past year and use that to kind of project out how we want things to look moving forward. Are we going to continue this? Do we want to add here, focus less on this? I definitely think the annual reports are a good place to start for content. All right.
Maybe our end goal, if we're setting a target date, not to decide tonight, but our target date would be to begin to have an approved plan by our January meeting.
Yeah. If you want, I can pass around too the strategic plan that we have for the Forest Board so that you
Perfect.
can look at it. And then in some of the supplemental packet stuff from that conference I went to, there's actually some strategic and comprehensive plans as well in there, just examples, small towns, what was it, wasn't Freeman, Maine was one of them, and not Monmouth, but there was a couple small town ones.
That would be
You could kind of look at those and see, are those types of things we want to implement maybe in our strategic plan? Some of it, they layer to their comprehensive plan for their town or their city. So I think it's important to look at the municipality, and then, of course, Auburn's working on that new comprehensive plan now, so.
I wondered about if somebody could update, because all I've ever heard about are these strategic planning groups,
Yeah.
which the manager had established, but I haven't seen, and maybe it's just because I've been away for so long, where the city council approved beginning process on the comprehensive plan. And our current plan, which is dated 2010, so it should go away by 2020, wasn't
Yeah.
approved, didn't get through the process until April of 2011. And the other piece of the element I've provided before but can do, I wrote myself a note, we ought to look at what conservation has in the current comp plan. We did that, meaning I looked up all of the references to conservation and we covered it, but that probably was within our first 6 months of existence.
And that's the current comp plan, and it's going to
It is
take
the
another
current-
couple years to come out with
Right,
the
so
new
we're
one.
not gonna
So we
be
should not
timely
be
again.
putting on hold, we should be using the current comp
Right.
plan. Going back to where they stand, all the subcommittees had those basic 4 meetings. Those were completely done by February. And then the strategic planning, larger entity, the oversight, has been looking at all of that data and meeting on a regular basis
I didn't see
to make
any.
on
I
that
looked for
comprehensive
videos
plan.
and I looked for
They're not,
minutes.
I know,
So
there
the lack
was-
of transparency is evident.
agreed,
Thank you.
agreed.
Which is exactly what happened in the 2010. The 2010 did neighborhood meetings, nobody kept records, there were no recordings, non-residents got to vote big issues. So I don't know if we're
Yeah.
repeating.
And a particular source of frustration for me as someone who was on one of those subcommittees on natural resources and recreation was that even in that group, we didn't really talk about agriculture. And there was always this idea that, well, there's a separate committee working on agriculture. There's so many committees on agriculture, I really can't keep track of them all anymore. But, it was just something, I agree with you, there needs to be transparency with that. And, figuring out how we can get that is important, because this comp plan, we should be using it as a guiding document. And, if it
It's only
feels like
ever
there's
used
not.
for planning board decisions.
And the public should be able to have access to where that is in that process. They should be taping those meetings.
I think,
Have not been, they haven't taped
know,
any
you
of
might,
the subcommittees either.
check the city charter, but as I recall, I think the planning board is charged with the responsibility of a regular update, updating the comprehensive plan, and so, but yet I haven't heard of, there've been this secondary supplemental group, but I haven't heard or aware of any specific activity as far as the planning board is concerned. So I think, we should be supportive of the charter as we go along, and if you know, and support the planning board or whatever if it's desirable.
So going back to the agenda item, what we're talking about this month is gathering documents and pieces together, like checking to see if that authority rests there, looking at the current comp plan, getting documents of a tool that we might use for the layout, making sure all our annual meetings, our annual reports are there. And it would give us a chance to look at other annual reports because some, which I don't think exists, but some of those committees have been around decades. And so what have, you know, again, trying to mirror or not forget an element.
All right. So it sounds like there's a little bit of homework for the next meeting. So I will make sure I can get an agenda out at least a week prior to our next meeting. I'll try and do a little earlier just to make sure that I have everything. And if you feel something's missing, I'll do a draft agenda first, let me know, and then we'll publish the official agenda.
I think you do a great job, and the only part of that I wouldn't push yourself is if you see we have homework assignments, remind us of that, so that when you do put the agenda together, you don't have to go chasing us. And to make sure that strategic planning work becomes a standard under work in progress until such times as we take it off or complete.
And that's Conservation Commission strategic planning work.
Yes, Conservation Commission strategic. And could we put work plan in that? Work makes me feel better.
Yes,
than the
again.
pie in the sky.
Okay. So if that's everything on the strategic planning front, we can get some kind of format started to discuss in our next meeting. We've talked about the vacancies, and the only other thing is listed here anyway, officer roles nominations for September 2019. Last year, so usually we do them in June, I think is what our ordinance says.
And we said it's not.
And it's every 2
appropriate.
years, yeah.
And we decided, I think, every year. And last year, I know we had decided pushing it to September. So we have a couple months to start thinking about that. I'm currently filling chair. Rihanna is currently filling vice chair. We had Jonna as the secretary to take minutes. That she had, you know, troubles with access to a computer, which is fine, but she's not here anyway anymore. So we will need to fill the treasurer secretary position. I do want to review our tasks for that. We had kind of formulated that last year. I don't really think we had polished it off in any way, so I think that's another thing that can be added to the agenda for the next meeting in July or potentially August. Probably July, is to review the tasks for the different officer roles, just to make sure that everyone knows moving forward what they're signing up for and what the expectations are.
And if you can pass that around and attach that email again, because I'm sure Sam
Yeah.
has not seen that.
Yep.
The other
That
thing
way
that
we'll
might
have
be
time to
helpful, and I don't
review.
think it's on the website, I know that Sue has it, because having served on the appointment committee, there's a page in it, but it would be very helpful, at least for our committee, I think for if they tell the term ending times. So if you don't have the most current list, because as an example, Sam may be a less than full term, I don't know, or he may be full term because if he's replacing Ben and Ben's term expired, then it would be the full.
Wasn't it June?
I was filling an open
Open seat,
seat,
so that
so
would
I
be
think
3.
it's, yeah, 3-year
And they're
term.
staged, I know, we've, you know,
Yeah.
I'm not sure we've had a full.
We had them all in June and then staggered. So that, hence the reason why we decided September was actually
Right.
so that we could get new people on
Right.
board, get them up to speed, and allow a couple of months before we voted on officer roles,
Yeah.
instead of doing everything June.
Right.
And so that was part of, I think, our rationale why we were moving it to September
Oh,
for
I-
officers. But now that if you came on and they're not going to stick to that June 2022, we'll say, and they're going to make it September, now that kind of like,
Oh, that's a different point. So we're mixing two things. One, we're mixing our officers' elections, which I believe by ordinance says June or July, expecting that the city council will fill all vacancies by that time.
Right.
And we, by practice, have moved it to September because we've been unable to complete the work. and we put that in the ordinance change for the reasons expressed. That's one issue. The second issue has to do with our terms, and that's out of our control.
Okay.
It's whatever the city council voted on, but knowing the work that the clerk's office had done in that area of taking all the committees and sort of spreading them around so that the poor appointment committee doesn't appoint every single member of every single committee on the same month. I think conservation is June, so the expectation is terms will end in
Right.
June. So you may be appointed for a partial term to whatever that, so as an example.
To finish out the term
Joanna's
that was set.
position, whoever replaces her will end a partial term. But I think in Sam's case, if he checks and he says 3 years, he's probably filling Ben's, what we
Well,
call
that's
Ben's
what
term.
I'm
And that would be a
assuming.
full 3 years,
Yeah,
starting in.
June
Whenever. he gets the appointment.
2022.
Yeah, June 22. So that's the clarification I'm looking for, because in September, we sort of will need to know term endings if
Mm-hmm.
somebody's going out before June.
Yes, I had that last
Right.
year. I think it was in the fall I had
Yeah.
gotten that. So everything pretty much is up to date, but since we've had a couple members leave and a member added on, I'll get a refresh list from Sue.
But it might be to encourage them to just put it on every webpage so that it stays current and saves both the clerk and the chairs a lot of chasing.
Absolutely. Okay, so that's just something to keep in mind. The officer roles and nominations, we won't talk necessarily about nominating tonight, but I'll circulate around the tasks assigned with each one that we had started on for review for July. And we can talk about it more then. Is there any other new business or commissioner comments that need to be added?
I wanted to bring up too that we had talked about is, again, with the Good Food Council and everything that's going on, they have started a good food charter, and a lot of municipalities, organizations, and private entities are signing this charter in support of.
Charter?
Yep. And it's just a support of, good local food, supporting agriculture, agro-tourism, conservation. And some of us have signed that charter already. I wanted to open discussion if that possibly the Auburn Conservation Commission would feel comfortable actually signing the charter in respect that Auburn Conservation Commission is signing the Good Food Charter to support that.
I'd like to see it first.
Sure.
And because I'm unclear, particularly to the word charter, to explain the rest of what the
Yeah.
intent was. I would think of it as more resolve. But, so are all these organizations supporting the Good Food Council's charter, or are each of these businesses creating their own charter, which may be in support of?
No,
Because-
it's the Good Food
Because
Council.
where I'd like us to look is to make sure that the elements that were in the Crossroads study,
Mm-hmm.
having to do with buying local, the $5 plan, our food changes for food access, without licensing kind of requirement.
Yep.
I'd want to make sure that whatever we sign includes those elements.
Yep.
That can be added to the July agenda as well. I'll have to do some digging and see if I can find a copy of it. I might just have to circulate a link, but we can add the
That's-
discussion too.
You don't have to do if you got a link, make us do the work.
I'm pretty sure it does touch on all those points you mentioned, Tiz, but I agree with
Just
you.
a
We
good
need to
check
we need to review it for sure. Yeah.
One review, and two is, the city spent a lot of money on Crossroads, and we haven't really done a lot with it. But I think the best part of, the two things I like best were all the population information and data from that part, what we look like, we as a city look like. And the second was that whole promotion of the $5, the healthy, the local markets. That's where we should be. That's a positive that we can do, so.
Yeah, I agree with that, and I think there were a lot of good things that came out of that study, even if it is disregarded quite frequently. But another thing that I thought could be an interesting thing for us to take on as a conservation commission that study did pretty well is it look at what other cities are doing, what other communities are doing, and in an advisory capacity like we have, I was wondering if maybe we could bring in representatives from other communities that have done this work who could provide insights to us and to the public. So I know the city of Winslow has done some real work around agriculture and revising their ordinances to promote agriculture, and not just, to, preserve land, but really to think about how can we support local farming, support a good local food systems. And they worked with the Maine Farmland Trust. And I know the Farmland Trust came in and spoke at a city council meeting and did some presentations. So, it might be something that we could consider. I don't fully know if that's within our capacity as a group to support, but it could be interesting to hear from them.
I think it's something that we can definitely advocate be done. I think that's one of the goals of the Bates study that was done, is to try and highlight what similar communities, not only across New England, but across the country have experienced and how they tackled their ordinance changes. If we're pushing for the formation of an AGRP advisory board or a commission, I think that would be more up their alley, especially if they're being established as recently as, or as soon as potentially September. That's definitely maybe something we can collaborate on. If they're not established, maybe the conservation can look into taking that on as the AGRP zone ordinance moves forward. But I'm not sure if right now, given the uncertainty of everything, if that's something we'd want to tackle right now. But
Yeah, sure,
definitely
that
keep
makes
on the
sense,
burner
yeah.
in the future, depending on how things sort themselves out. So.
Actually, his idea, I thought, was coming in from a different vantage point. It was, as we do our strategic plan, let's look at, because I track other communities. Mine tend to be in New Hampshire and Vermont, but other communities, conservation commissions, Scarborough and South Portland have great ones that are closer in size to what we are. So I was thinking, that goes to our strategic plan thing, but it could also go to, I thought you were talking about maybe getting us in a room and collaborating, finding out what they did, whether it's a site visit. And I was going to recommend you, because you weren't on the council, on the commission at the time, if we've got the video when Owen, whatever his last name is, spoke to us, he did a public of what conservation commissions do, how they act, what authority they have. It was an outstanding program, and I believe it was recorded. So you might,
Yeah,
for
we'll
your
check that
own,
out,
just
for
want
sure.
to see
Thank you,
it, and
yeah.
it would give us great idea on both
Yeah.
the food issue and our strategic plan.
Yeah, and I think, I totally agree with you, Jordan. I think, we wait and see what happens with the Ag Commission, but I think, the basic thing I just am excited about is, thinking about, we don't have to reinvent the wheel with a lot of this stuff. There are a lot of good ordinances out there. We just have to look for them, and, if we can draw on that expertise, then, good
Absolutely.
opportunity. Yeah.
I would agree with that. So you actually did remind me of something that I wanted to add to new business that I forgot about. So I'm not sure if it's obvious, but I've been trying to do a speaker series every year. So we had Owen in 2018. We were able to get Bates here in 2019, this April. That wasn't really my effort, but the Conservation Commission effort. And I recently had an issue with an injured animal, and I went to go see a local wildlife rehabber in Auburn.
Chippy.
And yes, my chipmunk. He didn't make it, but anyway, I had just mentioned to her I'm on the Conservation Commission. I know that I'm always getting asked where can I bring an injured animal. So, I just kind of threw the idea out. I didn't make any promises or anything, but if the Conservation Commission does want to do some kind of event, maybe in like January or something, regarding wildlife rehabilitation and options available here in Auburn, and maybe have some kind of workshop or presentation. She does do education outreach already, so she has some presentations and some, poster boards already. So I just thought it was a great topic just because it's something that I had experienced, but going forward kind of with this idea of an annual speaker, maybe that's something that we could highlight for 2020.
I think that's an excellent idea.
That's a great idea. Yeah.
Yep.
We've had a lot of run-ins with like barred owls getting hit, especially on Hotel Road, and having the avian haven come down and get birds, and I think it'd be great.
Even our wildlife management and
Wildlife management,
the
yeah.
gulls
Yeah.
removal.
Yes. All right. So that's something that's probably going to have to wait a little bit. I want to make sure it's timely for her because, there is baby seasons and all that, she'll have times that are better for her than others. But I will definitely just kind of keep it on the agenda as needed, but grateful to have the support of the commission.
I think it's a great topic.
Super
and
exciting, yeah.
the earlier she can tell us, the better for January, February. Also a great cabin fever reliever event.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Okay. Is there any other new business or commissioner comments that want to be mentioned? Or
I'll make just number one, I'm fully supportive of the long-range planning and the discussion that's occurred. I think also we need to recognize that, there's some steps action steps that we need, maybe lead baby steps, but get started. And one would be along the line of the Ag Advisory Committee and basically the minutes. It seems to me that the Planning Board, the Watershed Commission, the new Ag Advisory Group, and Conservation Commission basically have really a lot of potential overlap, but a lot of potential of working together, but too often we function as islands, and I think we need to build bridges, not fences. And so as a tiny step one, if I would encourage just basically if the other commission members ask John to contact the chairs of each of those groups and see if we could possibly arrange a sharing of agendas and minutes on a continuing basis, so that basically when there is a topic on an agenda that might be of interest, then we can communicate or participate and so on. But at least we're aware of what's going on in the other groups. And I would like to start, basically, I think as I recall, it was the May meeting of the Planning Board that had an outstanding public meeting, and the input on that was tremendous. And I would hope that anyone that copies could be made available to each of our members and basically study it completely, because basically there were a lot of excellent input, and I think one that was a little bit different, but I think has a lot of merit, was from Rick Whiting, basically, and really in support of the trend of housing toward areas where municipal water and sewer are available, and how that ties into some of our other thinking that some of the other groups are going on. Basic, but anyway, in general, I think that the minutes of that meeting that Eric compiled and basically provided the time, location on the video and that sort of thing was just an outstanding way to stop. And so hopefully the sharing that we could get with the planning board would basically at least start with that particular point. And as far as the committee that basically is charged with recommending a structure for the Ag Advisory Group, as soon as you receive your copy, I would encourage you to look closely at the first page. I think that basically their objectives are tremendous. I'd commend them 110%, but there is also the potential for a lot of unintended consequences that they may not have thought of. And so I think that I would encourage each member to basically look at it from that particular point of view, and their proposal essentially is based on the Crossroads report, but it there have been some tweaks that basically have really opened up some potential unintended consequences rather than closed them. And so possibly we could generate some dialogue there that might be helpful in providing a better product to the City Council. On the Bernstein Shore report, I think the major thing that occurred there was that they actually added a positive second opinion to almost the identical ruling that a judge provided in the mid-'80s, but had been overlooked because of a judicial ruling at that particular point, which basically confirmed that tie to the comprehensive plan. And I think the working together, watching out for unintended consequences, and trying to broaden the communication and fine tuning, really we can collectively provide a lot better product for the city council and iron out a lot of the tiny unintended consequences prior to getting it to the council and leaving it in their hands.
I think collaboration is key, and we've talked about, too, working with other conservation commissions, too, that could help support us. Poland has been, they do amazing work over there, and they're really our next-door neighbor, so maybe we could hold a meeting where we have a joint Poland and Auburn Conservation Commission meeting, and collaborate. How can we help and work together?
Yeah, I totally agree that collaboration is important. I can definitely include more members on the distribution list of our agendas and minutes, but my fear is that I don't want to become a circulatory and having, several packages of minutes to try and distribute. That's not really the role of the chair, so I would not necessarily advise for that, but I will make it more of an effort to at least increase our distribution list on where we're sending information to interested parties and extend the invitation for these members to come to our meetings, at least as a start. Potentially, we could discuss liaisons. I know that Tiz sits on the,
Lake Auburn Watershed
I
Protection.
was gonna say, I'm
When he was saying
gonna
that, I was
butcher
thinking,
it.
We need to hear that all the time about because he's done that from the beginning.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
To me, I would hope there wouldn't be any additional burden to the chairs other than this initial contact. Really, to me, the ideal situation would be each member's email be included as a part of the regular distribution to their membership. And basically, in that manner, it would automatically occur when any of those four groups basically was forwarding either minutes of their meetings or agendas of their meetings to their particular members, because
In some cases, that's done by, so I'm going to defend her work. In some cases, that's done by city staff. In other cases, our chair keeps getting the job of chair, secretary, and treasurer all rolled in one. And in the case of, say, watershed and water district, they also have staff that does that. I think the intent is good, and we should put that on how do we get that done. But it actually can be done if individual commissioners and individual commissioners on the watershed or trustees at the water district or planning board members just did it themselves, because I believe everyone you mentioned, their minutes are online, and they meet monthly or every other month.
I agree with you, Tiz, but at the same time, we all get busy and we forget to do it on our own. And I guess what I'm thinking is that just automatically, if the email is there, we get an email copy.
Yeah.
Period.
And that used to be true on planning board, both while I was a counselor and after. I had requested as a citizen to be put on the distribution list, because in my opinion, if you can sell it to the newspaper, you can send it to any resident that requests it. And that went on for a number of years, but somewheres along the line, somebody decided to drop me, and yet I know by the quality of the staff in planning board, I still get the monthly report on permits and stuff like that, which I read faithfully. So it may be starting, most of them that you talk about are actually city controlled. And so maybe we can look towards, that's an example of the research. When Jordan sends it to the city clerk, if the city has a distribution list, they could just do it, rather than give Jordan the list to do it with. Because I know from seeing the distribution lists that the newspapers are included and several other people. But in all the cases that I'm aware of, it's not an individual volunteer who's also chairing the committee.
I feel like I don't want to be inundated with all these emails, because
That's
if I
what
want to
I'm
read them, I will read them. But I guess what I was saying is collaboration, like going back to that, I think we could, if we had a common interest, like the Lake Auburn watersheds talking about the ordinance, for example, that we're also talking about. Maybe they invite us, or we're aware that we try to include them and invite them to that specific meeting with the intent, this is the topic. Or collaborating, like I said, with Poland Conservation Commission, maybe a couple times a year, we collaborate maybe every 6 months. We have a joint meeting. What are you doing? What are we doing? How can we help you? How can you help us? I don't know about being on an email distribution list, because I would be hesitant getting inundated with all of that.
I would,
know.
I would echo that. I agree. I get so many emails from day to day, and the more emails you get, the easier it is to miss them. So I think, but I completely agree with Morris. I mean, I do want to see collaboration, but I also think there are issues the planning board covers that we don't need to cover, and vice versa. You know, obviously we want to integrate everything strategically and make sure that we're on the same page, but you know, just reiterating the desire for collaboration and thinking about how we could emphasize that to the other bodies, I think will go a long way, because, you know, as we've said, the material is up there. And you can pretty much see video of most stuff if you want to. I don't know how many people have time to watch, you know, 3-hour meetings, you know, just for sport, but it is
Those council
accessible.
meetings are getting brutal.
Yeah.
I think
10,
the importance.
10 o'clock at night, oh my goodness.
I think the importance is going to come from building relationships with other groups. Like Tiz had mentioned, you're on the Lake Auburn Watershed Protection Commission, and some of them didn't know what the Conservation Commission was. So
Right.
I think definitely breaking down the silos needs to happen, but definitely interpersonal relationships and getting the word out there, and just kind of being proactive in our communications, letting them know we're here. That way, if there is a specific matter to collaborate on, they think of us, rather than, you know, just constantly trying to communicate via email, maybe not having a face to the name or to the organization. So focusing on extending invitations of these groups to our meetings when we feel they might be a really important member to have in our group or in our public. So I will definitely keep that in mind moving forward.
We could put that in our strategic plan work group of how do we
I like that.
maintain, what are the tools, could we use liaisons, and how would that work? Even going so far, 12 steps down the line, when I was active in my career, we just found the volume of journals and stuff to read. So we created a journal club, the 12 of us in Bangor, and we each took a particular journal and did the work and reported it out.
Right.
Just because, in addition to everything else, you didn't have all of the time and to read. We at least got 12 good journals covered. So not that I suggest we do that, but there may be a way to, as we sit down thoughtfully and work out a work plan, we know collaboration and no silos.
Well, I would also echo what Jordan said. You know, I think the relationship building point is a really good one, and there might be ways that we could do that that are just fun and don't feel like a burden to folks. I mean, I thought the event at Side by Each last week was a great way to
That was a lot
connect
of
with a
fun.
bunch of people and support a local business. So events like that, I think, have a lot of potential, and maybe doing some joint, you know, just informal gatherings. And I know you can't necessarily talk about city business, but even having that face-to-face relationship is something that will facilitate the other pieces. So
With appropriate posting, you can have city business.
okay,
So
that's
it's
good to know.
It's the public meeting rules. You just have to follow, and they're actually easy.
Okay, well,
I
that's
think
good.
it's definitely something that we should add to our strategic work plan, and kind of leave that discussion there. I think there have been a lot of great ideas thrown around, but I'm not necessarily sure I'm ready to make any final plans on them yet. So it's definitely something that we can discuss next month, when we're kind of formulating our draft strategic plan. And with that, is there any other new business? Commissioner comments? Oh, thank you. Is that in the
That's on the
agenda? Oh, agenda, okay. I don't have that printed, but I will make note. Okay, so with that, I'm going to motion to adjourn.
Second it?
Tiz seconds, all in favor? Perfect, thank you.
Yeah.
And that is 7:30.
Every year we should put on YouTube, because you told us that.
earlier than usual, or than lately, I should say.
I know, I was gonna say, because I don't know how many check boxes, so that means we have a lot of homework. huh?
No silos, no silos.
You have a lot of homework,
And
but
I've
it's
had
not
7,
I've heard the
super
island that, but the
specific
silos.
homework, I don't think. Not the way it's been, like, review this
Thank
ordinance
you.
in
Think
detail.
you
It's
should
more
bring it
just
up every
like,
year. But I'm nosy.
with ideas on this, come with ideas on that, so hopefully it won't be too
You asked us
burdensome.
to get.
I also hope you'll,